Hey yo guys, and welcome to this, yes, the very first sports episode here for me, Jason. I haven't really come up with a name of the show yet. That's still a work in progress, but it's going to be everything, covering everything from east to west, north to south, the whole world of sports. So it should be a really fun little project going on here for the foreseeable future, filled with tons of opinions, interviews, the whole kit and caboodle. I guess as we start the show here, a lot of it to talk about. Breaking news, as according to NFL Network, is that the Denver Broncos have fired head coach, or I guess I should say that the Broncos and head coach John Fox have both mutually agreed to part ways, coming off Denver's loss yesterday to the Indianapolis Colts in the divisional round. And all I have to say is, not surprised. Never thought, first of all, John Fox was that strong of a coach. I mean, when he was with Carolina, I think he did great things with a bunch of guys that were underachievers. But with Denver and the superstar power that he had, he didn't have to really coach. Peyton Manning was the coach of the team. I was never really blown away with John Fox's game plans for the big game situations. Last year, especially in the Super Bowl, their offense got sputtered out by a better game plan and a better defense. So Broncos are now one of the teams now on the hunt for a new head coach. And speaking of head coaches in the NFL, the Buffalo Bills today have officially named Rex Ryan the new head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And as a avid Bills fan myself, I wasn't as excited, but seeing what the reports are of Rex Ryan's plan for the team going into the future, it could be really interesting. I hope they keep defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, because without Jim Schwartz, that defense wouldn't have gone to the lengths that it would have gotten to this season. So I think if they keep Jim Schwartz as the defensive coordinator, they are set to go for the future. And apparently the Bills as an organization are really on the hunt to reel in San Francisco 49ers offensive coordinator Greg Roman. And that's something the Bills need. The Bills, they have a lot of guys that can make plays. You know, they trade up last year to get Sammy Watkins, which, I mean, they don't have a first-round pick coming into this 2015 draft, but you get a real strong playmaker. Their run game's been pretty solid. I mean, you had Fred Jackson, C.J. Spiller, Boobie Dixon, and Bryce Brown basically do a lot of the work this year for the team. Kyle Orton filled in a nice role, but now that he's retired, it's going to need someone like a Greg Roman to help motivate an E.J. Manuel, or we'll see what happens in the offseason. Maybe the Bills will pick up a quarterback that hits the free agent scale, but I think it's now time for E.J. and this team to be the real deal, because we've seen the potential it can get to, and them to fall short of the playoffs on the most Bills thing ever to do, to lose to the Oakland Raiders, who were most way through the season a miserable team. They got to get something going here. I mean, I think Rex, if he can have the success to start his tenure with Buffalo like he did when he started with the Jets and with Mark Sanchez for EJ, I'll be fine with it, because honestly, as being in the realm of a Buffalo Bills fan, honestly, the playoffs would just be nice. Tons of stuff, obviously, in the National Football League. It was divisional week of the playoffs. Honestly, I can say I didn't get to see too many of the games, but from what I saw, have some interesting thoughts on it. The Patriots and the Ravens got it on in Foxborough, and if you're a Patriot fan, this was the team you didn't want to see, and Baltimore lived up to the hype of that. They always cause trouble for the Patriots in Foxborough. Nearly went out there and stunned the world had it not been for kind of a gamble play with 37 seconds left as you're driving for the game-winning touchdown. You didn't need to force that ball to Torrey Smith in the end zone for Joe Flacco, but needless to say, I thought Joe Flacco had an absolutely amazing game, had 4 touchdowns in that game. Really took it to New England's defense like we haven't really seen anyone so far in recent weeks do anyway. Him having those big targets as well helps. And it looked like for a while, like the Patriots had been shell-shocked in the sense, I mean, Tom Brady makes a big underthrow to Rob Gronkowski after they've just gotten the momentum back, and then that was a momentum-swinging game. But the one thing I guess we can say from this week of the playoffs is, or so far for the theme of the playoffs is, wow, the referees, they just got to get out of this somehow, some way. There's been a lot of great football, but when it comes down to it, it's the officials that are the lead story in a lot of games. I mean, Wild Card Weekend basically ends with everyone talking about how can the officials pick up a flag after a penalty they've already announced. Then how can they not throw a flag for Dez Bryant running on the field in that Detroit game when John Harbaugh runs out on the field and basically does the same thing Dez Bryant does, but he gets a 15-yard penalty for Baltimore. So where's the consistency basis there? And then as well, when you look at the Cowboy game, again, Cowboys and the officials have had a pretty interesting thing. I mean, a lot of people say, well, the Cowboys get their just desserts in terms of karma. And you could say that, but I mean, it's such a stupid rule for what happened in that Cowboys game. Yes, everyone knows. I guess we may as well talk about it now. Dez Bryant goes up, makes a big catch in a game that looks like they're about to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat in Lambeau too, and go on to play the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. But because Dez Bryant doesn't complete the catch to the ground, the ball moves and touches the ground. It's an incomplete pass, and it's incomplete with him moving it towards the hands, the motion of that, and then the ball hitting the ground. So it's incomplete on two senses. I mean, I'm not a Cowboy fan by any stretch of the way. I have a lot of friends that are Cowboy fans, but the Cowboys did get a little jobbed here. But it's a good call in the sense that the way I look at it is it was a good call because by the letter of the law, that is exactly what the call should be, especially when you read what it basically was stating on the rule, saying if a receiver possesses, he must maintain possession of the football throughout the entire process of a catch. In our judgment, he maintained possession but continued to fall and never had another act common to the game. So right there, that pretty much sums up what had happened. And I feel bad for the Cowboys, but that's the letter of the law. But it's a rule they need to change. I mean, we saw this with Detroit in 2010, Calvin Johnson, and we've seen it many times. It's a stupid rule. It needs to change. If you make a catch and have it in your hands in the football move sense, that's a catch to me. I mean, I think we're just being too over-analytical of rules these days, in not just professional sports, but in society as a whole. So that's something that really needs to change. And I mean, that was a fantastic game. And once again, to say that the officials just take away from everything from that, I'm not cool with that at all. And I would say some people moving on to the next game, I mean, I don't want to brush off that as a big discussion, but to me, that was a huge deal. That the officials have overshadowed a great game, Ice Bowl too, even though it wasn't even nearly as cold as what went on in Lambeau back in the NFL Championship game of 1967. But I think the officials got to keep their nose out of something here. It's becoming too WWF for professional wrestling here, with all the officials making over changes and interjecting themselves in way. I mean, Christ, the NFL right now could use Earl Hebner. But the other game on yesterday, on Sunday, was the Colts upsetting the Broncos. And, I mean, yes, Peyton may have had a torn quad muscle, but you still got to give credit to how the Colts played. They prepared, and you could just tell that this Denver team wasn't themselves whenever that quad injury had happened, and they were just limping into the playoffs. And Indy's a young team that has a lot of guys that can burn you. I mean, T.Y. Hilton is becoming that elite receiver. He's accepting the torch from Reggie Wayne. And the Colts now will go play the New England Patriots next Sunday to see who goes to University of Phoenix Stadium in Arizona for the Super Bowl. So this young team is maybe finally hitting their stride since the Colts have drafted Andrew Luck, really turned them around, It was who's the better pick between Luck and RG3. Well, we can certainly see who's turned out to be the better one. However, I don't think it's all RG3's fault. I think he's got a terrible management and ownership with his situation in Washington. But that's besides the point here. I think the Colts played a fantastic game. Great job with them mixing up the pass and the run, especially in the fourth when you have a lead and you just need to grind some clock out. Like that, they took 8 minutes off the clock and had to make the Broncos do whatever they could to scrape their, scratch and claw back into the game, and that didn't happen. And the Colts just outplayed Indy in every aspect of the game. I mean, it's a team game, but there's still ownership could come to Peyton, and now Peyton. This loss has obviously changed the Broncos' fortune, as Peyton's going to have to consider, about retirement, and now they're out of coach because of this game, because there's no way they were expecting Indy to be that good. May have even underestimated them, but if you're Peyton Manning, talk about the team you don't want to maybe lose your career on is the Indianapolis Colts, and have the guy that they drafted after you to be the next future and say that he's the better quarterback. I mean, that's just rough. I mean, the only game you don't really need to talk about is the Seahawks did what they had to do. Took Carolina, who in the regular season, the past 2 seasons, they had met, and it was the Seahawks scoring on a last-second game-winning drive touchdown pass. Both matchups have been very defensive, both in the start of the 2013 season and the 2014 season. But this was just Seattle at home, and that was the one thing. It was those games were in Charlotte. This was in Seattle. Defense is going to win. Cam played really well in there, but the defense is just taken over. Cam Chancellor's becoming a superstar in this league. That pick 6 was amazing. Russell Wilson is just proving to be why he should be considered an elite quarterback, and why you can't just judge the size of the fight of the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. And I mean, Russell Wilson blows me away every time I see him. He, to me, is the perfect quarterback, which I guess can transition into the next topic. Today, Monday, is the big game in the national college, and for college here is the national championship, as you got the Oregon Ducks and the upstart Ohio State Buckeyes. I think this is an excellent game. You got the number 1 quarterback in the States right now, our number 1 projected overall pick, Marcus Mariota, Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, the man doesn't make mistakes. He's only thrown 3 interceptions this season, and 40+ touchdowns through the air and 15+ on the ground. To me, this is the next version of Russell Wilson. He's got plenty of receivers. Now he's missing a receiver out because he failed a marijuana test, a drug test, and got caught for marijuana, which that to me seems a little sneaky. But then again, why would you be? I mean, I know you won your Rose Bowl or before your Rose Bowl, but maybe let's keep this pot smoking down on the New Year's when you have this big stretch and maybe the biggest thing for your football career. So, I mean, the Ducks are really rolling. I mean, they dropped a couple spots when they lost to Arizona in this season, but they did what they had to do the next week against UCLA, and then, they were right back on track to be in the spot that they really should be in the national championship. Whereas Ohio State, I know a lot of people, unless you live in the state of Ohio, do not like Ohio State. But this year, I think they're in a different role as opposed to many years where they would be favorited or downright even with their opponent. They're the total underdog here. I mean, they come in, they lose Braxton Miller before the season starts. JT Barrett comes in, does a fantastic job. They lose to Virginia Tech, who, I mean, you shouldn't be losing to Virginia Tech. And then you have Cardell Jones come in, and this will be his 3rd start tonight, the national championship. His first game is the Big Ten championship, where they blow out Wisconsin. And then they come in the Sugar Bowl and absolutely dominate in the second half, I should say. They have faced adversity against Alabama, and then they just ran away with it with Ezekiel Edwards, I should say, running away, being a big benefactor, setting a Sugar Bowl record for yards. I mean, this team is proving to be why they belong to leapfrog the Horned Frogs, no pun intended, but should be a real interesting game. I'm super stoked for it. I don't even know what else you can say. It's just a high-powered offense meeting a pretty solid defense that's really coming to their own right, because the way that you shut down Alabama and Amari Cooper, Blake Sims, Dixon, the whole Alabama offense, plus what they did to shut down Wisconsin in the Big Ten game was really impressive, because Melvin Gordon was just dominating teams this season so far in college. I mean, he set the career rushing record for a game, and then I mean, sure, it was broken the next week by Samaje from Oklahoma, but I mean, that record hadn't been broken in forever. So since I think LaDainian Tomlinson said it. So all I'm going to say is this should be a real interesting matchup. Strong off, irresistible force meets a movable object, which makes it a real interesting game. So I guess I should say, let me know. Who do you think's going to win in this game? I'm going to have a complete recap of this game tomorrow. We'll have a guest on and we'll chat about it. It should be a real interesting game to talk about. So, for now, that's it. Peace out. Enjoy the games, folks.